Just learn something new every day and make time on your calendar to do something that you enjoy. Make it fun for yourself. So everyone's is different. Obviously, I'm more hands on. Like I want to play with AI tools to see how it works. I sometimes read the documentation because I find it interesting. I'm a nerd. Not everyone is built that way. Some people enjoy, learning from listening to a podcast. For example, this is a great one. Or some people like to network and actually talk to people. Again, those are our options, but find the way that you enjoy learning and keep doing that, and like make time for it.
Hey nerds, Monica here. Welcome to the Data Podcast for Nerds, where we get to talk to amazing professionals and ask them all about how they're using data to solve the world's problems. We're highlighting skills that data professionals use on a daily basis. Plus, we always include some fun bits because we're all nerds here and we love to have fun. So thank you for tuning in, and if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. And as always, folks, happy learning. Today with us, we have Dr. Serena Huang. How are you doing today, Serena?
I'm doing great. How about yourself, Monica?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So we typically start off our episodes by understanding people's origin stories. So if you could please tell us about your background and how you got to where you are today in your career.
Yeah, of course. I am a PhD economist by training, and I specialize in labor economics, which is the intersection of people and data, actually. So that's how I got started in data many, many years ago. And I got to work with government data sets, looking at gender pay equality issues. That was one of my first projects. And also seeing what affects pay, what affects a person's opportunity for getting promotions in the workplace. So those were fascinating problems I got to solve with government data very early on in my career. And I just couldn't get enough of it, apparently. So I landed my first job in consulting, analyzing the same thing, but for very different purposes in litigation consulting. So for those of you who are not familiar, litigation consulting is a interesting field in consulting where we support attorneys and companies on things like gender discrimination lawsuits and crunch the numbers on what the truth is. So really using data to support these type of scenarios where it's really stressful if you think about it for the companies involved and the individual employees involved in the lawsuit. So really try to bring justice to the world by using data. If I could make a T-shirt from that time, it would say, "People lie and data doesn't." So, yeah, I've got lots of interesting stories from that time, as you can imagine. And sometimes people don't purposely lie. It's sort of our perception of what happened, and then you bring in the data, and the data shows a different story. And that's the truth that we have to bring to the court. So that's the first consulting job out of grad school. And then I moved on to Deloitte, where I was doing a different kind of consulting, helping multinationals think about their strategy to optimize their taxes. So, and some of this involves, setting up your company structure in a different way, finding talent in other locations so that you can structure the company differently. And at this point, I was, instead of looking at people data, looking at financial data and also market intelligence, how to set up the company. So lots of research, lots of data, got to use what I learned in graduate school, but in a slightly different way. And I realized my heart is in people. So I really miss working with people data, and unfortunately got a call from a recruiter at GE General Electric at the time. They were looking to expand their HR analytics COE. And at the time, I had no idea what the world of HR was and didn't envision myself working in HR since I was an economist, right, by training. But I took the call and was fascinated by how the leadership was really open to someone bringing in data in a domain that historically wasn't super open to data, right? There's a lot of, I know people, I talk to people, I know my people by talking to people, but as far as what data says about people in the workplace, there wasn't as much maturity at the time. So I took the plunge and went, in house for the first time in my career. I thought I was going to go back to Deloitte and become a partner there. But as you can see from my LinkedIn, I never did. Because I loved it so much in house. Like there's just a different level of trust that people have with you when you don't have the consultant badge, and they're willing to share problems with you and have you solve them. So I was sort of like the consulting leader in house for this problem, and I went on to build people analytics teams in different companies, most recently including Kraft Heinz and PayPal, and started to really watch people analytics as a function grow and mature. So, a long time ago, I would not imagine working outside of Excel because the data was so bad and just in all over the place. And then, we ended up starting using Tableau to create dashboards to visualize people data, and over time hire data engineers, data scientists, IO psychologists to look at surveys and really build out a full function focusing on solving people related problems in the workplace using data analytics. Um, yeah, so that's been most of my career. And recently I launched my own company and have been on my own for about 18 months. It's been a super fun journey. And now I'm on a mission to educate the world about data and AI and how to use it to make better decisions.
Awesome. That's amazing. I was going to ask when you made the transition from the courtroom into Deloitte and working with like financial tax data. I'm like, oh no, how boring was that? I mean, I can say that because I come from an accounting background as well. But no, it's good to hear that you kind of found your way back to the people analytics and found your passion.
Yes. Yeah, I think the world will show you what you really love if you are willing to experiment. When I was going through these changes, I wasn't always 100% sure. I was lucky to have mentors who helped me along the way. And LinkedIn has been a great tool for me to network with other professionals and ask them questions about their career to help me think about my own journey. And one thing I really recommend to others is don't be afraid to try and don't say no to something before you even attempt it. So
Mhm.
essentially gather your own data, right? Like let the data tell you if you like something or not. Like I thought financial data would be, piece of cake. And, compared to larger volume of data, it sort of is, right? But then there's also all kinds of context involved in the financial data that isn't as intuitive as you would think.
Mhm.
So I uncovered a lot of challenges along the way, and I'm glad that I did. Like I can read a 10K was, half an eye open, and that's great skill to have, right? Do I want to do that on a daily basis? I decided at some point I didn't want to do that, but then I also brought that expertise into the people space where financial acumen maybe isn't top of the list for most HR professionals. And I show them that, look, it's really easy to do this if you just, look out for, section, these are the sections you look at, right? And pay close attention to these, and you can forget about the rest. Don't get overwhelmed. And I found that to be helpful in bringing that kind of multidisciplinary approach to whatever problem I got to solve.
Absolutely. For folks that are listening that might be a little new to people analytics and people data, what exactly do you do with that and what projects can you work on?
Oh, so many projects. My simple definition is using data analytics to make better decisions when it comes to talent. That's it. That's the purpose of people analytics. So let's walk through an example of hiring. For example, how do you hire the best candidate in the pool of thousands and thousands of people, right? And then think about it from your side. If you're looking for a job, how do you stand out as a candidate if you have to compete with thousands of other candidates? And hiring is one of the most critical problem in HR and probably the most expensive problem as well. So if you think about making a great hire, right? The benefits are clear. They get up to speed really fast. They work well with other team members. They are excited to understand the business and just dive in. When you make a poor hire, on the other hand, it's extremely costly to the business. And not just about the hiring cost in the process and the time loss, but think about the morale impact. Some of the things are a little bit more difficult to measure, possible to measure, but the impact on the rest of the team. And you as a manager having to think about the difficult decision of, do I let this person go? Do I put them on a performance improvement plan? How much time do I give them? Do I hire a coach for them? Well, that all goes on. And that emotional tax on you as a leader is very difficult as well. And on the candidate and now new hire, of course, wondering, gosh, did I make a mistake coming here? So hiring is one of the most important problems to solve in HR. So how do you know if you have made a good hire or not? One of the metrics that I've helped many companies think through is finding a quality of hire metric. A quality of hire metric, well, what does that mean? How do you know if someone is good? Well, someone can be good because they've stayed for a long time. Someone can be good because they got high performance ratings. Someone can be good in sales because they exceeded their quota. It depends on what job they're doing. There isn't always a single metric that can tell you someone is good or not. Alternatively, you can ask the manager. Think of the NPS that you see on products and services, right? Like, would you recommend this product to someone else? Sometimes I've seen companies do things like, would you hire this candidate again if you're given a choice? And that can be a little bit tricky, right? We're talking about a human being and not a product or service that we're recommending. So again, if you're trying to find a single question that can capture quality of hire, it almost doesn't exist. There isn't a handbook out there that tells you here's the metric to use. So I work with organizations to think through what matters the most to your organization. Whether it's, we really need the standard one question that can be used across, even though it's not a perfect question. Or we want to tailor it so that each function, each domain has their own quality of hire. Like sales is going to be exceeding the quota by X%. For others, it may be asking the manager, how long did it take for this person to get up to speed? That is sort of relatively harmless that you can ask across the board. And then for others, maybe it's performance ratings. So again, it can be a combination of those things, but you have to decide, how do you measure quality of hire before you can say, well, we're going to improve our hiring process. What are you improving? Hopefully, you're not just measuring the time that it takes to hire someone, but actually the quality of the people that you're bringing in. So yeah, that's an example of how data can be used in the hiring process.
That's awesome. Thank you for that example.
I'm curious, Monica, like what part of that is maybe new to you or exciting to you or perhaps unexpected?
Something that I didn't expect, but also makes a lot of sense, was that there's kind of like a baseline question to ask all candidates so that you kind of have that, that baseline to measure different candidates against one another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think the question doesn't have to be perfect is where a lot of organizations might get stuck on, gosh, what question do we ask? You can always try, right? You can, maybe if you have three questions in mind about asking their experience coming to the company, or asking the manager how it's been with this particular person, you can always try with different populations and see what gives you the data that you need to move forward and making better decisions, because ultimately what you want to do is make better hires going
Yeah.
forward. So that's going to likely vary from one organization to another.
Absolutely. And so, how do they come up with those questions? And also, are those questions always directly related to the specific role?
Mm. They usually work with people who have done this before and coming up with a question. So that could be someone like me, or they might have an internal people analytics team, or they could reach out to a survey vendor and say, "Hey, we haven't done this before. We need someone to do these surveys. Sort of a third party that's more neutral that will collect the data. What questions do you recommend?" Sometimes those companies have recommendations based on their experience, like a bank of questions you can choose from.
Mhm.
So all those are possibilities. And related to the role, I would say not necessarily, but because the roles are so different. Like if you think about finance versus IT alone, like those are drastically different roles. But if someone, it's been 6 months and they don't know what they're doing, they haven't talked to their manager, that's probably not a good sign, right? Something has gone wrong in the onboarding process. So some of those things can be universal. So kind of I think of it as a collaboration between people who know the measuring side. Again, could be the people analytics team, and then people who know the HR side. So someone from the HR function can really collaborate closely on what makes sense. And I usually won't leave out the business leader or in the process, right? So if you lead IT and you have a very specific process, let's say you have technical interviews that people have to go through, and maybe that's an important part of the experience that we want to measure. Are those assessments working? Are those interview questions working? Or is the interview panel doing their job as we're expecting them to? Or are they scaring people away that we should actually do something about that? So all these are possibilities of really connecting the dots between the measuring team, the HR team, and then someone in the business who's doing the actual hiring, is really helpful.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on those questions that kind of seem a little bit off the wall? And what I mean by that is like those ones that make you think outside the box. So I was asked some question, something along the lines of, if you were building a brand new building, how would you figure out where to place the restrooms?
Uh-huh. So the research has shown the off the wall questions are not helpful in predicting
Oh,
a person's quality. Oh, so it's not a great predictor of a new hire's ability, actually. So there's plenty of research out there if anyone wants to look it up on like hiring sort of assessment.org, interview questions that are helpful. From what I read, the most helpful ones are the ones that are closely related to the job that the candidate will actually do. So, for example, if you're going to be making presentations and building decks for a living, as a consultant, then the interview process may include something like you building a deck and making a presentation. That's a really good indicator whether or not you'll be able to do that on the job. Asking you how to place bathrooms strategically in a building, not so much. You can be creative, and maybe if the client is asking you to do that on the project, then perfect. But chances are that same problem won't come up ever again. And similarly, like how many golf balls fit into an airplane kind of question. not super helpful. So there are other ways to test whether or not someone can think on their feet, right? And I also want to bring in a different perspective on actually those questions are super challenging for the neurodivergent population, for example. Like, that is not a super inclusive question to ask. And if you want to attract a diverse, talent pool going forward, which we need, especially in data analytics, then that's something to keep in mind, that there some people's brain function differently, and those are not very friendly to their brains. So another perspective to consider.
Yeah, that's really good. I never even thought about that before. Because I always thought, the out of the box questions were kind of those, oh, can they think on their feet, like you mentioned, right?
Right. Because and I agree, it's helpful to have people who can think on their feet, but it's always thinking on their feet in a certain context, right, for the job. So if you are a consultant and you need to be able to think on your feet, what does that look like? Like the CEO asking you a tough question about their business and you have no idea, but you have to think on your feet by asking the right follow-up questions to get a little bit of context and then quickly make a recommendation. Again, that could be a simulated interview. That doesn't have to be completely random question that's unrelated to the job. So I think there are lots of ways to assess a candidate for their skill, and the closer it is to the actual job, the better off you're going to be.
Okay. All right.
But hey, you know what? You don't have to take my word for it. You're welcome to test it out, right? Like, you can design an experiment, for instance. Ask two groups of candidates different questions. They're similar candidates. One group gets the where to place the restroom question. The other group gets a something similar to what they would do on the job. And then you can see from the hires you actually made which questions did better at predicting their ability to perform on the job. So,
Yes.
yeah, totally open to being challenged. But yes, do check with your legal team and see if they're willing to let you experiment with the candidates as well, so you don't get into trouble.
That's a good point. So at this time, I want to deep dive into some really fun bits and get into picking your brain about some skills.
Of course.
Hey, nerd, are you looking for a career in data? I would absolutely love to help you out. I just launched a data career strategy program that helps folks break into data without breaking anything. I provided a link in the show notes if you want to learn more information about it. Now, back to the fun bits. So, from a hiring management perspective, what skills are you really looking for data analyst or data scientist positions?
Yeah, for data analysts, certainly I would say, like, let's talk about technical skills, and I don't want to call them soft skills, or business skills and technical skills as two buckets. For technical skills, certainly depending on the organization, I think the most standard ones are going to be Excel, SQL, some sort of data visualization, likely, whether it's Power BI, Tableau, or really fancy Excel charts. Those are your most basic, and really being able to clean up the data to go from the raw data state to insights where you can make recommendations. That's the skill. Whatever tool set you use is going to depend on what organization really has access to. Like, if the organization has no access to SQL and you just have Excel, you might just have to deal with Excel. So that's, again, I think about the skill versus the tool separately will help you navigate the interview process. And then as far as the business skills, one of them that's most critical is telling stories with data. Can you tell stories with data? well, it's not about telling a beautiful story that has charts that are in pretty colors. It's really how can you influence decisions? How can you help make recommendations? And here's how you know you're successful. If someone listens to your data story and doesn't do anything with it, your story is not successful. Regardless of how your story looks and sounds, if someone takes action immediately after your presentation, that's a successful story. You know you've done something right. You have convinced them to take action, as opposed to, "Ah, that's interesting. I'll think about it." Right?
Yeah.
So that's your signal for whether or not your data story skill is really strong. So as you're preparing for interview, think of those instances where you have done a great job in convincing someone to do something, take action, take your recommendation. That's a great story to share in your interview process. And then I think the other one that isn't talked about as much is business acumen. Business acumen in understanding your data in your context so that you make recommendations that the leaders will actually listen to is really important. So sometimes we get so deep in the weeds with data and we're looking at it right in whatever spreadsheet we have, and we forget to ask questions around, hey, does this data really make sense? What is it telling me? Perhaps there's a glaring problem that I need to go back to the data team and ask them about, what's going on and driving this that can contribute to the outliers that I'm seeing. So I think that business acumen is really important, where you can ask those critical questions. So maybe critical thinking I will add as another one, as a business skill that you really need to have to stand out, and think of examples of how you show that. I'll take a pause there, and then the data scientist, of course, that's a slightly different job. Besides SQL visualization, you hopefully would know either Python or R to build models, to do predictions, and solve problems for the business. So I think, again, like, the tools are different, but the skills may not be that different that you're using. Really going from the data to now you're building a model and making recommendations as well. And the point being, can you actually influence decisions with whatever you're presenting? So that data storytelling is still super critical, but you're just telling a slightly different story now and answering different questions. I think the business acumen is equally important, especially when you need to be the guard of data quality before you build a model. So if you see something strange, right, like see something, say something, as a data scientist, you really need to do that. The data doesn't make sense. It's going to, before it goes into the model, you need to ask that. Should I include this in the training data or not? Or should I exclude it because it's like garbage in, garbage out, right? So I think that's one. Another one is, um, I think especially for data scientists, communicating technical details to non-technical audience is super key. Like, again, it goes beyond storytelling. I think the communicating technical details, like the model, the data issues that you work through, and how did you make sure this was the best model? Like, you need to be able to explain that without any jargon,
Mm-hmm.
without any words that the someone who hasn't gone through the same training that you did can understand easily. Because ultimately, data without action is just waste. So a models without action is it's super expensive, right? Like, data scientists' salaries are not low. So think about that from your own career perspective as well. If you have created a lot of models in your life, and very few people have taken action, like, that's a dangerous place to be. And I do want to talk about the elephant in the room right now for lots of people who are working in a job or looking for a job, is job security. It's not what it used to be. I don't know if it really exists in any organization right now. So if you're worried about your job security, you need to think about really critically how have people been able to implement your insights and make different decisions, and have those decisions resulted in revenue increase, cost savings, something concrete that you can measure. Because when you're in, like, this is a really scary place to be. I'll put my HR hat on for a second. If you think about a company who's going through a hard time and they're going to lay off people, the dangerous combination is going to be high salary and low impact, right? So
Mm.
again, very candid talk, no sugarcoating here. But you don't. That's a place you don't want to be. So if you're in a great job that pays reasonably well, then you want to make sure that you are contributing, you're creating value for the company on a regular basis. And the way you know that is by looking at how they have used the recommendations from your model, from your presentations, and making a real impact. Again, revenue cost reduction, revenue increase, cost reduction, those are some of the ones that you should be able to tie to with your work.
Mm.
And yeah, and then the more that you're able to do that, the more confident you should feel that you can do it here and you can also do it somewhere else. If something happens to your job, you can take that skill set and apply it somewhere else.
Absolutely. And I agree with you that the business acumen is so critical to being able to, achieve those actionable items. I always felt that the business acumen was the hardest to improve or to really gain efficiency in. Do you have any thoughts around like how to increase your business acumen when you're at a company?
Yes. So something I would do as a manager, for new hires, I always pair them up with, one, a buddy on the team that they can ask questions to. So someone who's been with the company longer in a similar role, ask them all the questions that they can. And then someone in the business, like if they are mainly focusing on a particular business unit or a function or a domain or industry, then I find someone who is familiar with that particular area and sit down with them, and walk them through, this is how my business makes money. Like, again, like, we're in data, and but I think sometimes we forget that most business exists for the purpose of making money. So you need to understand how your business makes money at the end of the day, right? Is it through customers in a particular growth region? That's how your business makes the most money. Or is it through product innovation? Is it through creating patents that no one can copy, so you have an advantage in the market? Like, those are things you need to really understand, even as a data scientist in, let's say, HR, in a specific business unit, what have you. You have to understand those things to be successful, because then that allows you to not only ask the tough questions around data so that you know whether or not you can trust the data, because you're guarding the data, right? But also make recommendations. Once you do the analysis, you create a model, create those recommendations that actually make sense and resonate with your stakeholders. And without business acumen, it's very hard to do. So, yeah.
Yeah. I was just talking with a group of friends and we were discussing how like it should be mandatory for you to go on some type of rotation within your company so that you can experience different departments and what other folks are working on and such. Yeah. So that's good to hear that you had the same thoughts.
Right, the shadowing, if there's like a shadowing program, even if it's informal, that's super helpful just to see how they do their job. Obviously it's yeah, it can be easier said than done, especially now we're remote, but even just like be a fly on the wall in some conversations, and just as an example of like, this is how we discuss this problem, how we make decisions, that's very helpful to a lot of new hires in particular.
Mhm. So, continuing on our thoughts on upskilling, what are your advices around upskilling in the age of AI?
Oh, oh gosh, get comfortable learning new things every day. Um, that's probably what I would recommend. Just learn something new every day and make time on your calendar to do something that you enjoy. Make it fun for yourself. So everyone's is different. Obviously, I'm more hands on. Like I want to play with AI tools to see how it works. I sometimes read the documentation because I find it interesting. I'm a nerd. Not everyone is built that way. Some people enjoy, learning from listening to podcasts. For example, this is a great one, or some people like to network and actually talk to people. Again, those are our options. But find the way that you enjoy learning and keep doing that, and like make time for it. One of the things I recently shared on LinkedIn that I was really surprised it resonated with so many people. I got lots of messages. Was that I remember when budget was down and I really wanted to go to this conference. And my manager said, we support you, you know that, I hope, but we just don't have the budget anymore. Can you bring it up again? Remind me next year. And I thought, next year? Are you kidding me? Data and AI are moving so fast. I can't wait until next year. So, you know what I did instead? I asked for time off. I was like, I'm gonna just go. I need 3 days off, and I will pay out of pocket. And I managed to get free tickets from someone I knew. So the entrance, like, that saved me $2,000, and then the rest was like, and I also got to experience the conference from a different just mind space. I was on. I call it a learning vacation. Like I didn't have to, I wasn't rushing in and out of the sessions, trying to answer calls, answer emails. Everything was on fire, and I'm just trying to be in two places at once. I was relaxed. I was chilling because I was on PTO. So since then, this was many years ago, and I would carve out a line item on my personal budget for learning and networking. Like if it's just one big conference that's really expensive, I'm going to get to go and I'll meet important people and learn important things. I'm going to do that. I will commit to doing that for myself. Again, like it's not so easy, right? For a lot of people, going somewhere to learn is expensive, not just the time and money, but also other things like childcare, like pet care, or if you have aging parent that you are looking after, whatever the situation is, make the time and money so that you can invest in you. Because if you're waiting for your company to invest in you, it may not be on the same timeline that you are willing to wait for. And if your company has lots of funding for development, good for you. That's amazing. But for a lot of people, that's just not the case. So that's something I would recommend, that, not only find something that you enjoy doing, find the format that works for you, but also you have to carve out the time and the budget for it. Sometimes it's by asking strategically your company to do that for you, and other times it's just doubling down on you and make it work.
Yeah. Good for you for going to the conference.
Thank you.
Did you come back and brag about all of the new things that you learned?
Of course. Only to my friends, not to my manager.
Okay. That's fair.
That would have been unwise. And I think it doesn't have to be so big too. Sometimes there are so many meetups happening locally. There are free, or they're $5-10, and you can just make yourself go. And one of the things that actually, gosh, because I've been to so many events, mostly as a speaker recently, but also as an attendee, that I know what works and what doesn't work for me and lots of people in my community. Right, there are lots of like ambiverts, introverts who don't want to go to a giant convention center, be surrounded by 5,000 people and trying to make two new friends. So to that end, I started to partner with people and create more intimate and meaningful events where people can like come together and just chat about data and be relaxed without vendor chasing after them or whatever the situation is, like stressful after parties that you feel like you have to go, but you don't have the energy to go. So again, those type of situations, like I sort of like, this is a passion project. I just wanted to find ways to bring the community together in person, and therefore hosting something called Champagne and Data in Chicago next month. And it will be a vendor free, pitch free, even speaker free, just no stress, facilitated roundtables to talk about data, AI, and storytelling. That's it, over champagne and hors d'oeuvres, of course.
Oh, that sounds so amazing. You said it's in Chicago when?
October 9th. It's a Wednesday evening. And yeah, and to keep it vendor free, I'm like co-sponsoring this with a new partner of mine. And again, just want to get people together. And I know how hard it is to like go out there and network and feel all this pressure. So I want to create a pressure-free environment, and we'll have like just conversations, very very informal, but also insightful. And so far, we've got big companies locally like Kraft Heinz, McDonald's committed. Their data teams are coming. I think Dell is coming as well. So it should be a really good turnout. And yeah, and no one is going to ask you to see their demo. Don't worry. So yeah, I hope it turns into something that I can repeat on a more regular basis. And it brings me so much joy to hear things like, oh, I came to your event and I got connected with this person, and then now I got a new job. Like that makes it all worth it for me.
Yeah. That's so awesome. I wish I lived closer to Chicago to come.
It's a short flight, right, Monica?
Right?
Yeah, no, we actually have people flying in to come to this event, because well, Chicago is a hub for lots of different airports. So fortunately,
Mhm.
yeah. And then a couple days before that, I'm also hosting a thought leadership masterclass to teach people how to be a better speaker and build a stronger personal brand, all the cool things that it takes to be a thought leader in the industry. So I've got some people committed to coming to both things. So yeah, if you have the luxury of like working remotely, this is a time to use it, right? You can be in a different city, be on Zoom during the day, and then hang out with Serena in the evening over champagne or non-alcoholic beverage of your choice.
That's amazing. You're always providing such fun events for the data community.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, because it's like I finally get to do this, right? I didn't yeah, it wasn't always available to me, and now I have the support of other founders who have similar missions and share similar feelings after going to big events and just want to do something different. And we get to try things, right? Like I hosted dumplings and data
Ooh.
before. Yeah, it's smaller. We just like we eat dumpling, we talk about data. And I've done this in, I think, New York, Chicago, Hong Kong, Taiwan. We'll see. Maybe I'll bring it to Europe later this year.
You need to come bring something to Phoenix.
Okay, all right. I promise. When the weather cools down, it
When it cools down in a
will
few
be
more
on my
months.
list for sure.
Yeah, we're
It's a
still
little
in the
hot.
hundreds.
Yeah, double digit, not triple, please.
Yeah. So, for folks that are out there from different industries that are trying to get into the data field, what recommendations do you have or words of encouragement for them?
Don't be afraid to get started. Like, data is everywhere. Like, if you think about your day to day, you probably use data without even knowing. Whether that's a smartwatch that you have that tracks your steps and how you're doing, how you're sleeping, or if you're looking to book a vacation, you're probably watching the numbers on prices, right? That's a function of the supply and demand of seats and rooms and how popular the destination is. So you're already using data. So think about how you can just get your hands dirty is my recommendation, because you don't know how you'll be surprised how easy it is, I guess. Like I'm teaching a MBA course on business analytics, and a lot of people have never touched data before. And one of the things I do in a small group is just try something fun in Excel, and it could be a simple formula you're doing for the first time. It could be a sum, an average. It could be a pivot table plus a pivot chart just to show some trends, and that's it. That's enough to get someone going. And I've had one student who came back and said, I'm now changing my career. I want to do data. I think this is totally awesome, and I wanna do it. So so you can do something so simple and just try. And I think focusing on like starting from where and when you use data, and then think about the business, is where I would recommend.
Well, thank you so very much, Serena, for coming on the show with us and sharing your knowledge.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And for all the listeners that are out there that may have questions for you, where can they find and or follow you?
Certainly LinkedIn. I'm there, and you can also check out my website, datawithserena.com. And if you are interested in people analytics, I have 3 LinkedIn learning courses available. One is called The Data Science of Using People Analytics. Don't worry, you won't be asked to code in Python or anything. It's really focusing on using people analytics. So great intro in 45 minutes, and so far I have 20,000 students. So join the fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. And as always, folks, happy learning.
Happy learning.
We forgot to talk about Hello Kitty and dancing.
Damn. It's not too late. We'll just have Hello Kitty and dancing in the background.
Oh,
We'll have
yes.
Hello Kitty dancing in the background. Oh, how's that?
I love that.
I heard that Starbucks is collaborating with Hello Kitty. Did you?
Really? No, I
Yeah,
did
they
not
may
hear
be
this.
releasing like Hello Kitty themed cups or something soon. So,
Oh,
I
fun,
yeah,
fun.
I'll keep you posted. I hope that's
Okay.
not just a rumor. I would be very sad
Okay.
because
Looking forward
I
to
love coffee. So,
it.